Imagine this. You're standing in a grand hall, surrounded by the world's most powerful leaders. Suddenly, you are praised, publicly, awkwardly, for speaking your own mother tongue, as if it were an exotic achievement. This is not a hypothetical. This is exactly what happened in the spring of the year 2024, when United States President Donald Trump, during a formal luncheon at the White House, turned to Liberian President Joseph Boakai and complimented him on his beautiful English. For a moment, President Boakai, leader of a nation where English is not just a language but the official language, was thrust into the international spotlight, not for his policies or leadership, but for his speech. The world watched, some chuckling, many cringing, as a global misunderstanding unfolded in real time. But beneath the surface of this diplomatic faux pas lies something far more telling, a window into the persistent ignorance and misconceptions surrounding Liberia, its people, and its complex journey. Let's peel back the layers. Liberia is no ordinary nation. Its very founding sets it apart from almost every other country on the African continent. In the early 19th century, specifically beginning in the 1820s, the American Colonization Society, a group supported by both the United States Congress and slaveholding interests, began sending freed African American slaves to the West African coast. Over the course of several decades, thousands made the perilous journey across the Atlantic, seeking a new beginning on ancestral soil. In the year 1847, these settlers, known as Americo-Liberians, formally declared independence, establishing the Republic of Liberia, the first independent republic in Africa. But this was no simple act of nation-building. The Americo-Liberians, drawing heavily on the political and social structures of the American South, created a society where they, a minority of the population, ruled over the indigenous majority. The government, institutions, and even the legal system echoed those of the United States. But this model brought with it deep, lasting divisions. The Americo-Liberian elite, with their Western-style dress, customs, and language, created a chasm between themselves and the country's original inhabitants. Historian Dr. Elwood Dunn explains, the Americo-Liberians established a system of dominance, marginalizing indigenous populations and sowing seeds of social discord that would reverberate for generations. This legacy is still visible today, woven throughout Liberian society. While English remains the official language used in government, education, and the media, the real linguistic landscape is far richer and more intricate. Beneath the surface, over 20 distinct indigenous languages are spoken daily. Krapele, Bassa, Vai, Gio, Kru, Gola, Kisi, Mende, and Loma are just a few names in a vibrant linguistic tapestry. And at the heart of social life is Liberian Creole, a dynamic Creole language born from the mingling of English and local tongues. Linguist Dr. John Singler describes Liberian Creole as a living symbol of the nation's resilience and identity, evolving with each new generation. In bustling markets from Monrovia to Ganta, you'll hear Creole connecting people, bridging divides left by colonial history and social stratification. For many Liberians, Creole is more than a lingua franca. It's a badge of belonging, a way to navigate both urban and rural worlds. It is estimated that almost every Liberian, regardless of background, can communicate in Creole, while many are fluent in at least one indigenous language alongside English. President Boakai himself is known to read and write in Mende and Kisi, yet, like most of his compatriots, he converses in English and Creole daily. But language in Liberia is not just about communication. It is deeply entwined with the country's turbulent history. The Americo-Liberians' dominance created social rifts that only deepened across the decades. Exclusion from political power and economic opportunity fueled resentment among indigenous groups. These divisions simmered beneath the surface, occasionally erupting in conflict and shaping the country's political landscape. The 20th century brought both hope and hardship. Liberia was a founding member of the United Nations and played a key role in the formation of the Organization of African Unity. Yet, beneath these diplomatic successes, inequality and tension persisted. In the 1980s, long-standing grievances exploded into violence. A military coup in 1980 was followed by a brutal civil war, which raged intermittently from 1989 to 2003. The conflict left an estimated 250,000 people dead and displaced more than 1 million. A staggering toll for a nation whose population today hovers around 5 million. The scars of war are still visible. Liberia's infrastructure remains fragile, its healthcare and education systems are stretched thin, and the trauma of violence has left deep psychological wounds. Yet, even in the face of adversity, Liberians have demonstrated remarkable resilience. Community organizations, women's groups, and youth collectives have led grassroots efforts to rebuild and reconcile. The election of Ellen Johnson Sirleaf in 2005, the first female president in Africa, was a milestone in the country's recovery and a symbol of hope for the future. Today, Liberia's economy tells a story of both challenge and potential. The country operates under a unique dual-currency system, using both the Liberian dollar and the United States dollar in everyday transactions. This arrangement, a vestige of its historical ties to America, creates both flexibility and complications. While it can help stabilize prices and facilitate international trade, it also exposes Liberia to the fluctuations of the global economy. As economic analyst Robert Guest points out, Liberia's dependence on commodity exports, rubber, iron ore, gold, and timber, makes it acutely vulnerable to every ripple in global markets. To put this in perspective, agriculture employs the majority of Liberians, with smallholder farmers producing rice, cassava, and palm oil. Yet, the export economy is dominated by a handful of large, foreign-owned concessions. When global prices for rubber or iron ore fall, the impact is felt almost immediately on the streets of Monrovia and in rural villages alike. This dependence on raw materials is a double-edged sword. It brings in much-needed foreign exchange, but it also leaves the country exposed to shocks beyond its control. Education remains another major challenge. According to recent estimates, only about 48% of adult Liberians are literate, a sobering statistic that reflects both the legacy of conflict and the ongoing underinvestment in schools. And of those who can read and write, most do so in English or Creole, with only a minority fluent in written forms of indigenous languages. The consequences are profound. Limited literacy constrains access to jobs, stifles entrepreneurship, and hampers participation in civic life. Yet, amidst these complexities, Liberia's image on the world stage is often reduced to simplistic stereotypes. The awkward White House exchange was only the latest example of a broader tendency to overlook the country's rich history, cultural depth, and enormous potential. As cultural critic Aisha Harris observes, casual remarks like President Trump's aren't just awkward, they reveal a deeper lack of awareness about the histories and realities of African nations like Liberia. Why does this matter? Because global misperceptions have real consequences. When leaders and investors misunderstand a country, they miss opportunities to build genuine partnerships, invest wisely, or support meaningful reforms. Worse, stereotypes can reinforce the very divisions and challenges that hold countries back. Liberia's greatest challenges today are not just economic, they are political and social too. Corruption remains deeply rooted, not only within government ministries, but throughout the fabric of daily life. Dr. Ibrahim al-Bakri, a leading political analyst, warns, "Corruption is not just a problem in the government, it seeps into every institution, slowing progress and fueling public mistrust." This culture of mistrust has serious implications. For ordinary Liberians, it means that basic services, from electricity to healthcare, are often unreliable. For businesses, it creates additional risks and costs. And for international partners, it raises questions about transparency and accountability. The result is a cycle where progress is stymied and confidence is undermined. So what does the future hold for Liberia? Let's imagine two very different paths. On one hand, Liberia could remain trapped by its past. Old divisions between Americo-Liberians and indigenous groups, between urban elites and rural communities, might continue to fuel conflict and hinder reform. Corruption could persist, eroding public trust and deterring investment. Economic dependence on a narrow set of exports could leave the country vulnerable to every downturn in global commodity prices. In this scenario, progress would be slow, and the dreams of a new generation could be stifled by frustration and missed opportunities. Yet, there is another, brighter path. This path is built on the idea that Liberia's diversity of language, of culture, of experience can be its greatest strength. Experts like Dr. John Singler believe that embracing linguistic and cultural pluralism, rather than suppressing it, could foster greater unity and inclusion. In practical terms, this means supporting education in both English and indigenous languages, encouraging the use of Creole as a bridge between communities, and recognizing the value of cultural heritage in national identity. Imagine a Liberia where young entrepreneurs harness digital technology to create businesses that reach far beyond the export of raw materials. Already, small tech startups in Monrovia are experimenting with mobile payments, agricultural apps, and online marketplaces. With support and investment, these innovators could help diversify the economy, reduce dependence on volatile commodity markets, and create new opportunities for young people. Education is central to this vision. Strengthening schools, training teachers, and expanding access, especially in rural areas, would not only boost literacy, but also equip the next generation with the skills to compete in a globalized economy. The government, together with international partners, has launched initiatives to rebuild schools destroyed during the Civil War and to develop curricula that reflect both global standards and local realities. Non-governmental organizations are piloting literacy programs in Creole and indigenous languages, recognizing that mother tongue instruction can be a powerful tool for inclusion and learning. Political reform is equally essential. Building strong, transparent, and accountable institutions is the foundation for sustainable progress. This means not only passing anti-corruption laws, but also enforcing them. It means empowering civil society to play a watchdog role, protecting press freedom, and ensuring that elections are free and fair. Liberia's democracy, though young and sometimes fragile, has shown resilience. Peaceful transfers of power in recent years have demonstrated that change is possible, and that the country can avoid the cycles of violence that have plagued its past. What about Liberia's place in the region? Here, too, there are reasons for optimism. With over 20 indigenous languages and deep connections to neighboring countries like Sierra Leone, Guinea, and Côte d'Ivoire, Liberia is uniquely positioned to act as a bridge for regional dialogue and cooperation. Its experience with post-conflict reconstruction has made it a source of lessons for other nations facing similar challenges. If the country can harness its diplomatic and cultural resources, it could emerge as a leader in West African integration, peacebuilding, and even environmental conservation. The stakes could not be higher. History offers sobering lessons about the dangers of commodity dependence and persistent inequality. Countries that fail to diversify their economies or address social divisions often become trapped in cycles of crisis. Yet, history also shows that nations can change course. South Korea, once poorer than Liberia, transformed itself through education, innovation, and good governance. Rwanda, emerging from genocide, became a model for reconciliation and economic growth. Liberia, with its resilient people and unique heritage, could chart its own path if it seizes the moment. So what should global citizens, investors, policymakers, and even travelers take away from Liberia's journey? First, challenge stereotypes. It's easy to laugh at a diplomatic gaffe or to make assumptions based on superficial impressions. But real understanding requires looking deeper at the history, the culture, and the lived realities of people. As Aisha Harris reminds us, taking the time to understand a nation's story helps prevent embarrassing moments and builds genuine connections. Second, recognize that sustainable progress depends on strong, inclusive institutions. Whether in business, government, or education, the lessons are universal. Trust, fairness, and accountability are the building blocks of lasting success. No shortcut can replace these foundations. In Liberia, as in any country, reforms must be more than just words on paper. They must be lived in practice. Third, appreciate the power of language. While English is the official language, millions of Liberians express their hopes, dreams, and daily realities in Kripele, Bassa, Kru, and Creole. These languages are rich repositories of stories, wisdom, and resilience. Policies that embrace linguistic diversity can promote inclusion, strengthen social cohesion, and even foster innovation. Countries like Singapore and Switzerland have turned multilingualism into a national asset. Liberia could do the same. Fourth, look for opportunity where others see only risk. Investors and partners who move beyond surface impressions often discover untapped potential. Liberia's abundant natural resources, strategic location, and youthful population are all advantages. But the most promising opportunities may lie in sectors like technology, renewable energy, tourism, and agribusiness. Areas that can create jobs, add value, and build resilience against global shocks. Finally, remember that history is not destiny. Every nation carries the weight of its past, but none are doomed to repeat it. As Dr. Elwood Dunn puts it, Liberia's unique origins are both a source of pride and a complex challenge, but also an opportunity to chart its own course. So can Liberia move beyond the stereotypes, corruption, and instability that have defined too much of its story? The answer is a cautious but resounding yes, if, and only if, it faces its history honestly embraces its extraordinary diversity, and insists on accountable leadership. Progress is never guaranteed, but neither is failure. The next chapter is being written right now by Liberians themselves, entrepreneurs, teachers, activists, and everyday citizens who refuse to be limited by the past. As always, stay curious about the world around you. Remember, every nation